What's going on YouTube? In this video, we're going to be taking a look at a guitar from a company called GearIt. I bought this guitar as a Prime Day deal, but even right now you can still get this guitar for under $100. In this video, we're going to take a look at whether or not it's worth your time, effort, and money, or if it's just firewood. You can see here that it came double boxed thanks to Amazon Logistics. They had it wrapped up in here pretty good, and the second box was sealed nicely. Once I got the second box open, you can see they wrapped it in foam, and the guitar is in the case. All of the accessories came packaged in one bag, so they were nice and neat, not rattling around in the box. And once the guitar was out of the case, even that was still wrapped in foam and protected nicely. So let's go ahead and get this thing out and do a quick overview. So this is the Telecaster by GearIt. As we take a closer look, we see humbucker here, P90 here, three-way switch, volume, tone, and oddly enough, it's actually coil split. Taking a closer look at that coil split, it actually gives you a bunch of different options in all three positions. And I'm sure you probably noticed the F-hole here. You can see the cut isn't the greatest, but it is a semi-hollow body thin line Telecaster. And oddly enough, it's wildly heavy considering it's a semi-hollow body. The bridge here is kind of a standard hardtail bridge that you'd find on a Telecaster. Nothing really unique or special about it. Seems to get the job done. So this is a standard 22 fret Telecaster style neck. One of the things that you'll notice is it does have ball end frets, which is actually quite nice on a guitar at this price point, is you don't have any sharp fret edges to catch your fingers on. Unfortunately, the frets weren't as level as I would have liked, and I'll get into that later, but the neck overall was definitely a highlight on this guitar. So I think the only things that I really left out here are that the body is swamp ash. It's got a pretty decent binding around it. They did a pretty good job on that. I'll try to get you a little bit better view of it. Obviously the neck is maple, and the neck is definitely a highlight of the instrument. I think it looks really good, and it plays pretty well also. It does have a vintage style tuner on here. They're nothing special at all. It's definitely something that you could upgrade down the line. It's good enough to get you by. Kind of like the, I guess it's a synthetic bone nut, which I think is just fancy verbiage for plastic. But again, somewhere down the line, swapping out the nut and the tuners would definitely help with tuning stability on this instrument. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and do a bunch of different demos. I'll demo the pickups in the various configurations. I'll add some distortion, some clean tones, and we'll see how this guitar sounds, and then I'll get into the pros, cons, and my final thoughts on this instrument. I'll start by demoing the P90 and then just kind of move the switch inevitably towards the humbucker. then just a quick rhythm test here. So that should give you a good idea of how this guitar sounds. What I'm going to do now is get into the pros and cons of this guitar. And what I want you to do is make sure you stick all the way through this, hear out the pros and the cons, because both of these are important to your decision on this guitar. So let's go ahead and talk about the pros of this guitar, starting with the first pro, and it's definitely going to be the neck. The neck on this guitar hits way above the mark in my opinion, and it certainly didn't feel like the type of neck I would expect on a sub-$100 guitar. To be fair, I am a bit of a sucker for maple necks, but this neck just felt really smooth to me. It was definitely a pleasant surprise on this instrument. The second pro to this guitar is going to be the pickups. Overall, I thought this guitar sounded pretty good, and the benefit to that is going to be you don't have to run right out and mod those out. They're good enough that even as you progress as a guitar player, there's a lot of tone that you can pull from them. So that too was definitely a nice surprise. The third pro to this guitar is going to be ball end frets, and that is where the edge of the fret is actually rounded into a ball. And one of the things with budget instruments it's pretty common is they have sharp fret ends. Thankfully, the ball end frets leads to smooth, rounded fret edges, and you don't have any of that type of issue with this guitar. The fourth pro to this guitar is going to be all of the accessories that it comes with. They do give you a nice case, they give you a tuner, a cable, a strap, some picks, and some strings, an extra set, but we'll discuss that a little bit later. But they do give you all of the necessary accessories to get you started if you're a beginner. And lastly, the fifth pro to this guitar is obviously going to be the price, right? It's kind of hard to expect more for under $100. Oh yeah, and one more pro, while the action was a little bit high, the guitar was completely playable out of the box without any adjustments needing to be made. But it isn't all sunshine and rainbows with this guitar. There are some issues that you should absolutely be aware of if you're considering it, and some of these issues may actually steer you away from this guitar, so it's very important to watch this all the way through. Alright, so after going through all of the different pros, it's time to tell you what this guitar doesn't do well. And the first con of this guitar is without a doubt going to be the finish. The finish on this guitar screams under $100. Like, it looks like someone went over it with 2000 grit wet dry in certain areas. There's just no reflection to the paint. It's dull. It almost looks like it could be buffed out, and maybe I will try that in a future video. But the guitar also has some mild dings, some scratches, and I'll try to get you video footage of that. And the F-hole cut is kind of sloppy on the inside. That could be sanded down. So there's a lot of areas with the finish that make this guitar just feel cheap. The second con to this guitar is going to be that the frets aren't leveled. Having these unleveled frets causes some fret buzz, which I don't know if you were able to hear it in the demos that I played, but there was definitely some fret buzz going on. It's mild, it's not crazy, the guitar is still playable. It was definitely playable right out of the box for me, but if you're a seasoned guitar player, you're definitely going to notice this. A beginner, is probably not going to notice that, and if you're looking to buy a guitar just to see if it would hold your interest, I wouldn't let that stop you. The third con to this guitar, and that's going to be that the strings are awful. After about an hour of playing, this is what my fingers look like, and it appears as though these strings were just heavily oxidized. Either way, my fingers came out looking pretty gnarly, and that's not something I've seen on some of the other budget guitars that I have, to be perfectly honest. This is the first time that's actually happened and my fingers looked that bad. With that said, there's a couple different ways you could go about fixing this. If you're a beginner and you're intimidated by changing the strings, I think a string cleaner would likely fix this. The other option, of course, would be to simply replace the strings. And if you're a seasoned guitar player or someone who's modded instruments or someone who's even been playing for a bit and knows how to change strings, that's fine. But if you're a beginner, that's likely not something you know how to do, and it's something to take in consideration if you're gonna buy one of these guitars. You know, if you're the kind of person who can watch a few YouTube videos and handle it, good, awesome. Go ahead, swap it out, put some better strings on it. But if you're not and you're intimidated by it, you need to consider that that might be a cost or an added cost to purchasing this guitar. And lastly, con number 4 would be that the tuners and the nut aren't particularly great. Now, obviously, sub $100 guitar, that's kind of to be expected. Again, it's something that you could mod out in the future, and really all it means is you're just gonna have to tune more frequently. That certainly wouldn't be a deal breaker to me on a sub $100 guitar because you kind of know that going in, but it definitely seems like it's worth mentioning. So with that said, there's a couple of camps here where this guitar may be an option. It just depends on your needs and your expectations. Camp number 1, never played a guitar, thought about picking it up, and wanted to get something for under $100 as cheap as you could with some accessories to see if you're gonna stick with it. Those folks, I think this would be pretty good for because it will give you an idea of whether or not you're gonna like it. The guitar itself is playable right out of the box and it comes pretty much with everything you need to get going. The second camp where this would be good is for those who want to become modders, who want to start modding instruments, but you don't want to try modding your $1,000 guitar. You want to practice on something first. This is an ideal guitar for that because you can practice on it. If you screw it up, it's not really a big deal. And if you end up actually making it a decent guitar, great, even better. You only paid under $100 for it. So who's this guitar not for? This guitar is not for someone who thinks they're gonna get a Fender quality or even really a Squier quality instrument. This is still a budget guitar, and while it does do a few things right, it still suffers from many of the same issues other budget instruments suffer from. So I hope that gives you guys a good idea of what you can expect when purchasing one of these guitars. You know, you can't really expect a flawless instrument. You know you're gonna have issues, and I tried to outline what all of those issues are gonna be in this video to give you a better idea of what to expect. So please, if you found this video helpful, be sure to subscribe to the channel because I'm gonna have more content coming like this on budget instruments. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I do try to answer most of the comments that come through on the channel, and as always, thanks for watching.